Alrighty, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Episode 21 this week. We've got Jack Hermansson versus Marvin Vettori. Quickly recapping kind of last week's events. Blades versus Lewis. Not a great card for me. Not terrible either though. We got a gold medal on verdict, hit 4 of our 6 predictions, which included 2 of 3 underdogs. It's probably the best example of a card in kind of showing that it's important to actually follow me on verdict to kind of get my picks on fights updated or added onto their system. We lost the main card there with Curtis Blades testing positive for COVID. And yeah, there was 2 changes to the verdict card after the posting of my analysis. So of those 2 fights, I did go ahead and actually select Jonathan Pierce by second round knockout, which I was very happy with. But yeah, also chose Ashley Evans-Smith, which turned out to be a horrible decision. In terms of our betting side of the card, none of our bets came in, which was a shame, which brings me right up to my worst call of the night. Josh Parisian, you slobby motherfucker. Heavyweights are my new kryptonite. His movement wasn't all I cracked it up to be, obviously. If he could let the slowest and heaviest man in the game close off the cage. And then the gas tank on it, hard to watch, really hard. My best call of the night was Bill Algeo via a decision. Although him winning by decision was by and large going to be his win method, nothing special on that. Just my actual breakdown of that fight was fairly bang on. His advantages on the feet in versatility, speed, and movement, and then his really, really sound BJJ defense and slipperiness in order to reverse some of those positions and stay safe on the mat, even while Spike was fresh. A great performance against a very dangerous guy. And yeah, that was my call of the night. Moving on to this week now, just a little disclaimer before heading in. I'm just going to put up photos of the main fighter stats shown. The UFC website is terrible for displaying accurate stats, whether that be like fighters' records or striking numbers or grappling numbers. They've actually listed Jamal Hill at 2-0. Like, come on, man. That boy is 7-0 with 1 no contest. Should be 8-0. So it's dumb shit. No point showing that at all. And just before getting in, I'd also like to allude to the discrepancies this week between verdict odds and betting lines throughout this card. But rest assured, I've found us the right side of the value on both accounts. So strap in and we'll hit the bottom of the main here with Nate Landwehr versus Movsar Evloev. Nate is 3.17 times on verdict and $4.70 at the bookies. Movsar Evloev is 1.46 times on verdict and $1.18 at the bookies. 2 guys here that have actually come across to the UFC from the Russian M1 promotion. Evloev actually debuted in M1, went 10-0, and now has come across and had 3 fights in the UFC. Both guys were champions over there, Evloev in the bantamweight division and Landwehr at featherweight, which is always a talking point in Movsar's fights thus far. His 3 UFC bouts have been at featherweight, and 3 fights in, he's now really well filled out at the weight class. He looks like a natural 145er. I'm sure someone on the commentary will talk about how they're amazed that he ever made 135. As for their skill sets, Evloev is extremely well-rounded. His boxing's actually really nice, and although he only has 3 knockout victories, his shots do seem to have a bit of pop, a bit of power behind them. He does also utilize kicks, although he throws less than Nate and doesn't mix it up as well. And then in terms of his striking defense, also pretty responsible. He fights with a high guard, good in and out movement. But the wrestling is his bread and butter, very strong up around the torso against the cage, that Greco-Roman style, and also has the ability to shoot in on the hips when there is a little more space. Once on the ground, he looks to secure control time. That's kind of his thing. Not overly aggressive with ground and pound, but he does remain busy with some smaller shots. He pretty much just has smothering top control. He gets his hips up real high, forces his opponents down using his head and shoulders. He also uses tricks like the handcuff, grabbing an ankle to stop his opponent getting up to their feet. So he's a pretty tricky customer down there. As for Nate, he doesn't use wrestling offensively at all, really, but defensively he has some really, really good ability. The takedown defense he showed us against Darren Elkins was so good, especially considering that Darren landed his first takedown attempt because Nate then went on to stuff every single one of his next 12 attempts, which is massive. And, Elkins is such a relentless chain wrestler as well, who's also strong in those clinch grappling battles like Evloev is, which was something I liked to see from Landwehr going into this one. He managed to dig underhooks, find a whizzer, reverse position against the cage, and then just disengage. His IQ that way impressed me a bunch, because even when he did all of those right things, got the reversal, and then was in a dominant position against the cage, he pushed off and got it back into a striking battle. He didn't play around where he shouldn't, which is exactly what he'll need to do here. I honestly believe Landwehr has a good chance here as an underdog. He is as game as they come. He won't quit at all. He'll look to be the aggressor, press Evloev back. Movsar's boxing game looks best going forward, as most people's offense does, and his wrestling game is most threatening when his opponent's against the cage. If Nate can block the shot like he did against Darren, he's going to circle out, reset in the middle, and then look to be the aggressor, look to get Evloev on his heels where he's far less dangerous. And Nate's a wild man. He throws all sorts of attacks. He kicks more than Movsar, has greater striking volume, uses the tie clinch to work knees, and he does that out in the open as well. He doesn't need to be against the cage, which is key here, because if he's against the cage, it's obviously the takedown threat, or more so. We've seen him enter distance with elbows. He split Darren Elkins bad a couple of times with elbows on the entry, and then his leg kicks, he hides his leg kicks within combinations or exchange as well. Another important fact here, to not throw that leg kick out there alone and give Movsar the chance to catch it. Another thing he does with his striking is he doubles up on the same side, throws 2 lead jabs or 2 right hooks at a time. I actually do like that, especially against a guy who's pretty sound defensively in Evloev, because his unorthodox approach, it's going to give him a better chance to confuse Movsar, not give him a read, get him out of rhythm, and get a little kind of lapse from him when they're expecting an attack up the other side, and you don't conform, you come on the same side. You come on the same side. Nate defensively isn't great. He gets hit a lot, but he does get plenty of his own work off too, and he's a pure entertainer, hands down, behind the back, yells at his opponent. It could definitely rattle Evloev, and although I won't bank on Movsar underperforming because of it, I'm going with a risk play here early in the main card, and I'm taking Nate Landwehr. The takedown defense will be key. Nate can force a few stand-ups, but if Movsar is landing the takedowns as he pleases, Landwehr won't win this fight. But if he manages to keep it standing for the most part, keeps resetting off the cage and sets the pace like I think he can, he'll have the striking versatility and volume to take this W. So that's my pick, Nate Landwehr, via a gritty decision. 5.12 times, currently on verdict. That's my play. Moving along, main card, second fight. Roman Dolidze versus John Allen Arte. Dolidze is 1.25 times on verdict and $1.61 at the bookies. John Allen 5.04 times on verdict and $2.27 at the bookies. So we've got Georgia versus Brazil here. And, without being a complete downer, it seems to me like it will be a relatively low-level affair, which is probably harsh considering I actually do like Dolidze's skill set. He's a very intimidating guy, pretty calm on the feet, pretty patient. He did get a late start to MMA. He made his pro debut at 28 years old. But so far through 7 fights, he's done well to gradually increase the level of fighter he's faced. And, his last 3 fights have been that next step up against much higher level competition. Blokes with records 15-4, 13-3, and then Ibragimov 8-2 in his last fight. And he's finished all of those opponents. He has a good kicking game. He doesn't just throw your standard techniques as well. He has the axe kick in his back pocket. Who knows what else? I haven't seen a great deal of him. Maybe 3 or 4 fights I managed to get. He goes to the legs a lot, and he also checks leg kicks, a skill that nowhere near enough people are adept at doing. And then big power in his hands, decent speed, not the best technique, but plenty of pop in his shots. And even though technique isn't his strong suit, it won't necessarily matter, as John Allen is an out-and-out brawler. He comes at you with wild winging combos. It actually impresses me that he has secured 9 knockouts like that. I feel like everyone he's knocked out kind of covers up and shits themselves when he closes distance. Dolidze will be the first to land, in my opinion, purely off the fact that he throws the straightest strikes. I also think he's going to adopt a game plan off the back foot here. Let John Allen close distance and, be the counter striker. He showed his ability to do that against Ibragimov in his UFC debut. And, that way when he does engage, he'll multiply the effect of his shots by using Allen's erratical and crazy forward movement against him. The grappling is also something I wanted to touch on here. Allen showed pretty good ability to find some takedowns, get off some ground and pound, look for subs in his last fight. And, he reversed Rodriguez through the air, worked the body lock trips a couple of times as well. But his top control wasn't all that, and he found himself getting reversed and controlled for large periods as well. I think Dolidze has the far better grappling game. And it's kind of a clash of styles, or a clash of approaches within himself. As patient and calm as he is on the feet, he is one of the most wild and most reckless scramblers I've seen on the ground. His takedowns are good. I've seen him work the hands, hide the shot, then shoot double legs in the open, body lock slams from the clinch. He can get it done in a variety of ways. And then as soon as it hits the canvas, he just starts looking for a finish immediately. Ground and pound, looking for the neck, going for a leg. He often goes submission over position, but being such an explosive guy, it hasn't actually cost him yet. I have seen him do some shit that I don't like. I've seen him pull guard. That's never a good technique, but, then he swoops for a leg. But he is young in his career, and against someone I don't think he's super dangerous on the ground in John Allen, I can't see his kind of erratical nature on the ground being a problem here. So to my prediction, I'm with Roman Dolidze, and I'm rolling out with a second round submission at 15.67 times. It's the value play on verdict. There's far shorter payouts for a knockout and a decision, but his resume reads 7-0 with 4 knockouts and 3 subs. So I like that. And if you look at John Allen's record, 5 losses, 1 via a decision and 4 via submission. So there's something in that, I reckon. John Allen's been tapped out 3 of those 4 times in the second round, hence my selection of the middle frame. And I'm actually going for some extra style points here. I took style points 2 weeks ago, specifying Figueroa via a round 1 guillotine. So I'm having a dip again. I'm going Dolidze via a heel hook. The wild man. A fucking terrifying submission. Allen has been heel hooked once. Dolidze's wrapped this one up twice. So don't be surprised if we see the big Georgian swipe a leg. Alright, third fight along in the main card, Montana De La Rosa versus Taila Santos. Montana De La Rosa 1.69 times and $2.50. Taila Santos 2.46 times and $1.50, $1.51. Pretty fun one here in the women's flyweight division. 2 girls with reasonable frames as well for the weight class. This fight is definitely that classic contrast of skills. De La Rosa being the craftier, superior grappler, whilst Santos will lead the way on the feet. De La Rosa actually slowly becoming one of the more frequent competitors in the UFC's women's flyweight division. This is going to be her 7th appearance, which is only 2 fights behind the all-time leader in Caitlin Chookagian. And in her first 6, she's gone 4-2. She's a young girl. She's only 25 years old. And we have seen improvements being made in her game from fight to fight. Her grappling's always been there. That's her go-to. 9 pro wins via submission. But her striking has been what was lacking. She was very one-dimensional, rarely using kicks, rarely targeting the body or legs, pretty much just wanting to see this hit the mat. We have seen her in more recent fights beginning to implement that variety. We probably see even more growth in that department through this fight. With that being said, she's still a long, long way behind Taila Santos with regards to striking ability. Santos is a very dangerous girl on the feet. She's quick, much quicker than De La Rosa, hits way harder, has a far better kickboxing game, and her movement's far smoother. De La Rosa has some seriously suspect footwork. Her head movement is non-existent. Those 2 defensive holes were what led her to her last loss against Viviane Araújo, another girl who is a really good striker. And she was essentially landing whatever she threw. Without bobbing the head or throwing feints, Araújo's jab was just lighting her up, as well as the leg kick piecing her up when standing in that heavy stance. She just kind of hunched over real heavy on the front and back leg. And I look at that and I think, what are Taila Santos' 2 favourite strikes? The jab from her orthodox, which is very fast, and the inside leg kick. kind of no matter the improvements Montana's made, I can't see past Santos putting the hurt on her on the feet. Montana has also had massive problems with her nose in the past. She's had it broken regularly. Well, she's had it broken lots of times. And if Santos can land that jab on it, I see it just opening up like a waterfall within the first round. Another area on the feet where Santos is so strong is in that tie clinch. She works her knees with ferocity. And facing another tall girl in Montana here, that midsection is going to be wide open for those shots. And then even when they're grappling against the cage, I think Taila's going to be the stronger girl. She has good body lock takedowns herself, good throws, which takes extreme strength. And then her own takedown defense is solid as well. The one thing she is susceptible to with her takedown defense is the trip. Her balance is probably her weakest area, but aside from that, she has shown great ability to remain upright. As for the ground game, though, I have to talk about that, as it probably sees them at some point. Montana will be better here. Her jiu-jitsu is nasty. She transitions between subs and positions, like changes positions really smoothly. She looks to pass and get to more dominant spots, which is a huge factor, as Santos has good defense from her guard and he's threatening off her back there, but then once she gets past, she's pretty woeful at defending or regaining guard. She doesn't do anything herself. She waits for her opponent to do something and tends to get controlled for minutes, a minute or two at a time. In terms of Taila's own kind of offense on the ground, she does have jiu-jitsu, but she tends to lose position when she chases subs herself. Doesn't look smooth with it at all, in my opinion. Her top pressure also leaves a lot to be desired. She gives her opponent too much space. I've seen plenty of people escape her top control. So as good as her own takedowns are and as strong as she is with her throws, the ground advantage definitely lies with De La Rosa. So to my prediction, there's definitely a route there for Montana, some trip takedowns, past Taila's guard, gather some control time, search for submissions. That's what I'd say if I was voting Montana, but I think Santos should take this one. She didn't look good in her UFC debut against Mara Romero-Borello, but I think that came down to some bright light jitters. We've seen one performance from her since. She was far more aggressive, far more willing to take the fight to her opponent and looked really, really good. Her record at 16-1 is obviously padded, lots of her wins regionally against debutantes or girls with negative or ordinary records. But she did dispatch of them easily, 11 of her 12 finishes coming in the first round. So read from that what you will, versing scrubs, but when you're wiping the floor with them, and although her last 3 fights going to decision has kind of coincided with a step up in competition, I don't mind the fact that in that happening, in doing so, she's actually accumulated 45 minutes of octagon time rather than just these fast first round finishes. The growth she'll get from that is far more than a first round finish. And at only 27 years old as well, she too is improving from fight to fight. So my exact prediction here is Taila Santos via a first round knockout at 15.68 times. Kind of an obscure obscure prediction for women's MMA, but Taila's a problem on the feet. 10 of her 12 finishes have been knockouts, 9 of those in the first. I think her striking and aggressiveness spells big trouble early for Montana, who has been hurt before. Alright, co-main event now. Ovince SaintPreux versus Jamal Hill. OSP 1.33 times on verdict. Misrepresented at the bookies, $2.46. A moderate underdog. Jamal Hill 4.07 times on verdict, big underdog, and $1.53 at the bookies. And these odds are way off. This could well be a case of too much too soon for Jamal Hill. I saw a lot of people on Cleedson Diabru in his last fight. I think Jamal Hill was $1.60, Cleedson was $2.20. So I know lots of people are going to be playing OSP here in the plus money. And although I did play Jamal against Diabru in that last one, I feel like I'm going to join the crowd here. OSP is a true veteran of this sport. And although he hasn't been getting consistent returns through the past 3 years, he really hasn't taken steps down further in competition than the top 15, top 20. And when he has taken on that slightly lower scale of opponent, I'm talking your Tyson Pedros, your Michelle Oleksiejczyk's, Alonzo Menafield last fight, he's won those fights. The one exception being the Ben Rothwell fight, but it was at heavyweight. I'm not taking that one into account. And Ben Rothwell's kind of always been there, even though he's on the comeback now. Jamal Hill is a very good fighter, someone who's fun to watch. He's notched 4 knockouts if you include the finish over Abreu, which got overturned to a no contest when he pissed hot for marijuana, and 4 decisions. His skill set, a rangy striker who kicks a lot. He uses those kicks to the legs, body and head, very slick with it. His movement's sound. He's going to be the busier guy on the feet. OSP tends to plod and stalk forward when he's on the front foot and kind of decides to just engage when his back is on the cage rather than circle out. Hill will have a volume advantage. OSP prefers to fight a slow-paced affair, whereas Jamal loves to stay busy. He landed 93 strikes in 2 rounds on the Contender Series and then 101 when he UD'd Stosic in his UFC debut. And he has that cardio to keep that up through 15 minutes. He's even won a 5-rounder on the regional scene against Daquan Townsend. But OSP is such an exponential step up in competition for him, especially when OSP has shown us the ability to squash youngsters and up-and-comers as of late. Because OSP is a huge guy. Jamal's an inch taller, but SaintPreux still has him in the reach department and still has him in the size department. SaintPreux is thick as fuck, which is going to trouble Hill. His volume and pressure often comes from the outside where, he can typically stay out of his opponent's range. It won't be the case here. Whenever he lands, OSP will be able to as well. And OSP's own kicking game is elite. The way he manages distance and hurts guys to the body with his teep. And then, his left kick is going to hurt you whether you block it or not, to the body, to the head. His legs are fucking massive. And as powerful as Jamal may be, as much of a knockout artist he may be, OSP is more powerful. And in talking that, OSP's chin and durability is solid. People talk shit about his durability, but I disagree so much. He's only had 2 knockout losses from 39 fights, 29 of those fights with the UFC Strikeforce organizations against some of the most lethal knockout artists to grace the octagon. Another problem for Hill will be the clinch game. He usually loves to work and get knees and elbows in through that spot. OSP is so much wider, a stronger guy. I see him reversing those grappling scenarios against the cage, just like he did against Alonzo Menafield, then smacking him with his own shots, even securing bodylock takedowns, going up around the head and shoulders and taking him down that way. Hill's takedown defense has been exposed already. Darko Stosic took him down 6 times from 9 attempts. And to Jamal's credit, he was only controlled for a couple of minutes from those 6 takedowns. His stand-ups were good, but OSP's top pressure and submission threat is light years ahead of Darko's. And, the jiu-jitsu isn't even close. OSP is so crafty and dangerous and strong on the ground, whereas Hill's ability on the canvas goes as far as getting stand-ups. If OSP secures a compromising position, it's over. Jamal's win condition in this one for mine is a volume-orientated decision. Sure, he could catch OSP, but I like his durability. And yeah, I think it has to be kind of like the fight that Dominic Reyes fought against OSP. And the question I ask myself is, do I think Hill is on that level yet? And my answer is I don't really think so. And at $1.50 thereabouts, I won't be taking the chance that he simply is just that good. So I'm taking OSP and I'm running with the first round submission at 3.48 times. I think OSP finds a finish. If he doesn't, Jamal Hill might be able to run away with the decision through that kind of volume advantage I spoke of. And at 8.75 times for the Hill decision, I can totally endorse that play if you're on that side of the fence. But I've got to stick with the veteran here. If this hits the deck as the stats say it should, I cannot see Jamal surviving a scramble with this monster of a man. As for selecting the first round, 5 of OSP's 8 subs have been in the first. And OSP has a total of 14 finishes as a pro within a frame. A very dangerous customer. Alright, main event now. Jack Hermansson versus Marvin Vettori. Jack Hermansson 1.40 times and $2.12. Another misrepresentation. Marvin Vettori 3.47 times on verdict and $1.70. The slight favourite at the bookies. In terms of those odds, the verdict and the betting odds, I feel as though neither of them have got it quite right. I think that Hermansson is the deserved favourite, but not by as wide of a spread as verdict have him. Anyway, it's a very intriguing matchup at 185 pounds. Marvin stepping in on short notice for Kevin Holland instead of taking on Jacare, who he was slated to fight next week. And now this becomes Vettori's kind of first true test at the top of the division. I understand he fought Adesanya and lost the decision, but that was when Izzy was on the come up, both outside of the top 15, Outside of that fight, Marvin's best wins have been kind of against the likes of Andrew Sanchez, Carl Roberson. I'm not saying those guys don't have ability, because they obviously do, but they are not on the same level as guys like Hermansson and the other top 10, top 15. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Marvin stacks up. As for Vettori's skill set, he's actually really well rounded. Him and Hermansson are very similar in terms of the abilities that they bring into the octagon. We've seen Marvin utilise a kick-heavy style before. For example, in the Adesanya fight, he went to the legs a lot. And we've also seen him defensively sound to the kicking game. He checked all of Robeson's kicks, circling out with a high guard, very smart against a dangerous kickboxer in Robeson. He's also shown great takedown defense against highly regarded BJJ practitioners with good takedowns such as Sanchez, Diego Ferreira. I guess he always seems very well prepared for his opponent's skill set, brings in an appropriate game plan, and manages to show different facets of his ability based on who he's fighting. And I suppose the point that I'm making with regards to that is he hasn't had a chance to design a game plan on how to take on Jack Hermansson. If anyone can do it on the spot, it's his coach, Trevor Whitman, but I definitely feel that the late notice of this bout favours Jack. And on top of all of that, Hermansson is probably one of the more unpredictable guys in the UFC. The way he moves and throws strikes and even grapples is super unorthodox. I don't feel that either guy here is really dangerous on the feet. Neither of them have notched knockdowns in the UFC. But if I was splitting skills, I'd say Vettori slightly more pop in his power hand, while Jack boasts a speed edge on that lead jab, which he throws a lot and has marginally better movement as well. He's the lighter guy on his feet. Vettori often finds himself flat-footed, and I've seen a greater ability in Jack to still pump out that jab or throw some off-step kicks whilst moving backward or laterally to kind of manage distance, keep his opponent from rushing in on him with power shots, which is what Marvin does like to do. Jack also has higher volume. He threw 496 total strikes in his 5-rounder against Jacare, including over 100 in both the 4th and 5th rounds, which tells you just how good Jack's conditioning is. Marvin stays solid through 3 rounds with his output and grappling, but we've never seen him fight 5, which is another little tick towards Jack for mine. In terms of the grappling, I do fancy Vettori's wrestling game over Hermansson's. I think he's slightly stronger in that department, has slightly better technique. Once on the ground, he also looks to be more aggressive with the ground and pound or trying to move through guard. Jack does stay extremely busy on the ground, but he throws a little less heat, much more content to stay in his opponent's guard to work than pass. The difference though is when Hermansson's on his back, he's extremely active. He gets that butterfly guard going, creates space, and then it's very dangerous looking to throw his legs up or attack his opponent's legs, like we saw against Gaslam when he got the heel hook, which I think will work well for him against a guy like Vettori, who does look to pass or posture up to get off ground and pound. All of those movements are going to give Hermansson opportunities to use his kind of explosive technique to stand up or search for subs. So, to my prediction, I'm going with Jack Hermansson via a decision at 4.80 times. He has an experience edge, competition edge, has fought the 25-minute total before, which I like. I think he'll have the better of the striking exchanges. I think he's going to land some takedowns of his own and then kind of nullify Vettori's slightly superior wrestling game by using his aggressiveness against him, forcing those stand-ups, getting space like I just talked about. The big worry, in my opinion, is if Vettori takes a more conservative approach on the ground and kind of looks to control Jack for periods rather than attack. He could manage to secure some rounds in doing that, but I feel like the lack of time to design a game plan will factor in here. He'll adopt his natural fighting style, which is far more active than passive, and Jack Hermansson will kind of have his way and have all the answers in there. Alright, so that is the breakdown of the main card. We're going to quickly scoop over the bets this week. We've actually got a bit of an outlay. We've got the multi, as always, and then we've got 4 single plays. So, the multi this week, we've got Dolidze via finish, whether that be knockout or submission. We've got Taila Santos moneyline. We've got OSP, by finish as well, knockout or sub. And then we've got Hermansson at Hermansson money line at $23.83. No need to harp on those, go over those any longer. I'll jump straight into the single plays. The first single play we've got, it's a bit of an abstract one. We're taking Nate Landwehr at $5. I know I listed him at $4.60, $4.70 in my breakdown. That was on an Australian bookmaker sports bet. This is the best price I could find on Bet365. It's simply just too high. I can't look past it. I think Nate Landwehr is a very solid play here as an underdog. Movsar Evloev is the better fighter, but Nate's got no quit. $5. I'm happy to take the risk there. Next single play, we've got Dolidze by TKO sub at $2. All 7 of his wins have been finishes. 4 of John Allen's 5 losses have been finishes. Powerhouses, boys that come forward, engage the fight. I think that one's going to be fireworks, however low level it may appear. I think it will still be entertaining. Next single play along, we've got Ovince SaintPreux by TKO or sub at $3.30. His style, his slower pace doesn't exactly suit a decision, especially against a higher volume guy like Jamal. I think he has the better chances there if it goes to the cards, but his power and submission threat is miles ahead of anything Hill's ever seen, ever versed. 20 of OSP's 25 wins have been via finish. I think $3.30 is value. I think the fact that he's an underdog is value, and I like that play there. And then the last single play of the card, we've got Hermansson money line at $2.12. Getting him as an underdog here is insane. I'm surprised there's not really like a name value for Vettori either to warrant him being the favourite. I expect these prices to get closer together before fight night, so I'd hop on now. I wouldn't be surprised if they close $1.90 a piece or Hermansson even slip into favouritism. That's the betting outlook on the card, guys. Thanks for sticking around, listening this far. All my socials, my whole record since making these videos through 20 episodes now are all in the description. Drop a comment, have a chat, tell me your picks, tell me your bets, tell me where you think I've gone wrong. We'll open up a conversation channel down there. Aside from that, hang around for next week. God, off the top of my head, I've forgotten what next week's card is, but I think it's a banger. The next 2 cards this year are absolutely insane. I'll talk to you guys then. Catch up.